Hey guys, so I want to talk about my mental disability. I have been battling a brain disease for about 8 years now. I've been hospitalized for it probably like the 3 times now. And it's just been an ongoing struggle. And so I wanted to kind of just open up on here about mental health because it's so important. And a lot of the times, mental health can be invisible. A lot of the times people mask their feelings and mask their true emotions in order to fit into society, because neurodivergent people see the world in such a unique way. We see the world in a way that not everybody agrees with, and it can kind of challenge the status quo. It can challenge society's ideals and their image, because sometimes we don't fit into that image. And a lot of the times, neurotypical people are in a state of performance, right? And so sometimes that performance means that in order to fit in and to be a part of the image they deem as acceptable and valuable, a lot of the times when neurodivergent people come into those spaces, they're often rejected because they have such a unique way of seeing the world. They don't just go with the status quo, and they're not always trying to fit in to the detriment of themselves, you know? So anyway, I'm just gonna go through a couple things on why mental health feels invisible to other people and why that is. And after coming out of this last hospitalization, I am seeing things a lot more clearly. I have a lot more support. I have a lot more idea of my action plan and how to keep myself from, we call it in the mental health world, we call it relapsing or having an episode. That does not mean drugs or substance abuse or withdrawal from substance abuse at all. We just use that term because if you have a mental illness for a really long time, and usually if you have certain genetic mental illnesses, that is lifelong. Not every mental illness is lifelong, but it's particularly genetic illnesses are lifelong, and they activate at a certain age. For me, my illness was activated right at 26. That tends to be when a lot of things are activated for people. I did have a couple concussions before that, so I'm not sure if what exactly activated, whether it was genes or environmental factors. I do believe that because of my abusive childhood growing up in a cult, I repressed so much of my emotions and tried to detach from my past. And when I detached so hard that now the only time those feelings, those trauma comes up is in a conflict when I get triggered. And I learned that through therapy, that I had a therapist who told me, if you detach so much from your past and that it never comes up unless you're triggered, then that means that you need some deeper healing. And usually that means that you need to be with a therapist. I'm going to try EDMR, which is like IDI sensitization, something I can't remember what it stands for, but it's supposed to help with trauma in particular. So a lot of my illnesses, I think the root is trauma as well as genetics. And that's different for all people. I can't speak for all people, but I want to get into why it's so invisible to other people, even though it's so real to you. And the first reason is that there's no obvious visual marker. Physical disabilities often come with visible cues like wheelchairs or braces, canes, while mental disabilities live in the brain and nervous system. So there's nothing to technically see from the outside if you're not in the middle of an episode. People might notice differences or changes in an episode, but if you haven't had an episode and you're taking your medications, then you could come off as normal to other people, and people would never know how deep your struggles are and how much you battle your own mind. People learn to mask to survive. So many people with mental disabilities are highly practiced but appearing fine because society rewards functionality and punishes vulnerability. And that's true in almost every environment. Vulnerability is something that certain people can tap into. Not everybody can tap into being vulnerable because it takes such an amount of courage. And so I learned through my experience that I have been trying to mask my illness and hide it for 8 years. And I finally got to a breaking point where I realized this is not something I can hide anymore. Like, you just can't hide it from, your loved ones, when you're going through it. It's like, and you shouldn't have to hide that, I just, for myself personally, I mean, it's to me, it's kind of, I've had a lot of looks of pity. I've had a lot of people look down on me for what I have and what I deal with. So I struggle sometimes with embarrassment and feelings of insecurities when I talk about what I deal with. And a lot of the time, people just don't know, like when we have opened up recently to our close friends and family, a lot of people have come back with, oh, I have someone in my family who went through that, or I have someone in my family who works in mental health, or I have someone in my family who, deals with either bipolar, ADHD, autism, schizophrenia, anything like that. There's a lot of people going through similar things. And every time I've been hospitalized, I've met people with my condition, and it's something that is really encouraging. And one of the best parts about those episodes is being able to be comforted by people who have your illness. It is comforting to not feel alone, because you're never alone. Even though you might not know anyone who goes through what you go through, there are groups, there are things online, therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists, any type of mental disability, there are groups online that can help. And I've been connected with the NAMI Association, as well as Psychology Today has a group that you can enter. So anyway, let's go on to the next one. The third one is functioning well in parentheses, because someone can work, parent, create, or smile while internally struggling with debilitating symptoms like disassociation, intrusive thoughts, paranoia, or emotional dysregulation. So a lot of the times when I have not been good, I have still tried to show up for the people in my life, and I'm learning that it's okay to not be good, it's okay to observe yourself in a state that you're not exactly happy with, and to know that this too shall pass, It's something that has helped me a lot with realizing I don't have to act on every emotion, but I can observe those emotions and, process those emotions without having to be driven in the car while my emotions are in the driver's seat. You want your emotions to be in the passenger seat, and you want your brain to be in the driver's seat. What a therapist once told me is that if whatever your core belief is, I'm not smart enough, I'm always broken, I'm not good enough, whatever your core belief is, if there is no actual evidence that would hold up in court to support that core belief, then it's time that you let that thought pass by and throw it out, because if your courts don't go off of feelings and emotions, they go off of evidence. And a lot of the time when we're so caught up in our feelings and emotions, we start to have black or white thinking, all or nothing, catastrophic thinking, everything is going to be the worst case scenario. And we have to pull back from that and observe and let those thoughts be whatever they want to be, but don't identify with those thoughts. Let those thoughts flow by you. So that's what I'm learning. I'm not very good at it, but I am learning it. And so, just trying is sometimes all you need to do. You don't have to be perfect at this stuff, because this is the thing with a lot of mental illnesses, not every mental illness, but with a lot of mental illnesses, there are no cure, especially with mine. There is no cure, but there is management, and that is medication, that is therapy, psychiatrist, there's management. So I have been able to manage, and I am, learning all the things that I need to manage even more and to manage better. Sometimes it's not always about being perfect. Sometimes it's just about having progress. The number 4 is that symptoms fluctuate. Mental disabilities often come in waves. Good days can erase credibility on bad days in others' eyes. So there's a lot of times where I have really, really good days. And something we learned in my therapy class was that happiness comes and goes. Happiness is not a forever emotion. Happiness comes in waves, just like bad days come in waves. So it's important to accept that you're going to have both good and both bad days. And there's no way to honestly control each one. There's times with mental illness that your brain gets hijacked by the illness. But what we have to work on is just being aware of that and not letting our thoughts get the best of us, And so, for me, because I do have a lot of good days and I am a happy social person most of the time, a lot of people don't understand how deep and dark my struggle is and has always been. I have what to me feels like a well of pain that when I get triggered, I go into a very dark place and I kind of spiral down. And I know a lot of people relate to this. Even with suicidal ideation, I've struggled with that my whole life, not necessarily my whole life, but my whole life since my diagnosis, and so that has always kind of been in the back of my brain. And so I had a conversation with my sister who also had struggled with suicidal ideation. And when I was talking to my friends, I realized that a lot of people, even who don't have technical diagnoses, struggle with suicidal ideation. And so it challenges me to even think what is normal, because in my mind, the black and white thinking is there's normal people and there's neurodivergence. But even my therapist I was talking to was opening up about her own anxiety and how she's thinking about getting on anxiety meds. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of, when I was talking to my friend, he said, that he had struggled with suicidal ideation as well. And it just made me realize that, when I was talking with my sister, let me back up. So when I was talking with my sister, she told me that during her time of having heavy suicidal ideation, when she did not have resources, insurance, or any way to get mental health help professionally, she was in a remote area, and anyway, she told me she felt like she had one foot in the door of life and one foot out the door, and I relate to that a lot, It's like as soon as conflict happens, I'm out the door, And it's like I've realized through this last hospitalization that I want to choose life. I want to choose being there for all the people who love me, being there for myself, learning how to love myself more deeply, learning how to self-soothe without always having to have someone physically there with me. There's a lot of things that I've learned that I'm trying to apply, but once again, I'm not perfect. And this is a lot of new information. So right now, I'm just going slow and I'm just trying to be the best person I can to myself. And I love that I've been able to make that choice to realize that that's not the only way out of pain and suffering. ending your life is not the only way out of pain and suffering. It's not. There's actually so much hope and so much resources and so many people that can help you with your mental illness, that can help you with therapy, with group therapy, finding other people with your condition. There is a way out of your pain. It's a lie and a limiting belief in your mind that your only escape is that. Just to end it, that's your only escape. That is an immature thought. The thought is that there are many ways I can help and my pain and suffering. Not to say that you'll never have pain and suffering, but there are ways to work on trauma with professionals that will help you come out of your dark times, with hope in the future and knowing that there's different steps you can take. And I just have to say this because I am in Georgia, but you can always call 988. I'll put it on the screen. If you're ever having ideation, if you're ever having bad thoughts, you don't have to call the cops even. You can call 988 and unless you need an ambulance, but you can call 988 and a mobile crisis team will come to your house. Therapists will come to your house. I'm not sure how many other states do that, but I know that each state has a crisis line. So I call it all the time. Like sometimes when I just need someone to talk to, I call the crisis line. I call it just as a preventative, So anyway, I just want to throw that resource out there and I'm going to put it in the description below. So another thing here is that productivity hides disability. So if someone is useful, their suffering is minimized. Capitalism often recognizes disability only when productivity stops. So for me, I just learned by my therapist early warning signs of depression and what that means. These early warning signs of depression are considered stopping showering, stopping self-care, stopping doing simple household chores that you always do, like kind of shrinking in your life until, you're frozen, And for me, I was very productive at my job, at my new job. My metrics were good. I was doing well for the company, but inside I was struggling and I was stressed out and I was stopping showering. I was like only showering on the weekends, which is not what I like to do. I don't wash my hair every day, but I do shower. I like to shower every day or twice a day. And in the hospital, you typically shower once or twice a day as well. Just a little thing as well. And this is really about just the productivity. If you're being productive, if you're doing things, if you're being useful, a lot of the times people don't notice that you are depressed. They're not understanding that you're slowly disappearing because once again, you're masking. So that is another thing that can get in the way. And I did realize that my job was stressing me out to the point where it was not good for my mental health anymore. Now, emotional pain is easier to dismiss than physical pain, okay? So emotional pain is easier to dismiss than physical pain. Society is more comfortable believing a broken bone than believing someone's internal thoughts. So even though I have a brain disease, a lot of people will tell me when they see how much medication I'm taking or when they see that, kind of the reality of like what I'm going through, a lot of people will be like, oh no, you don't need all that medication. Like you shouldn't take your medication. Sometimes the illness thinks, you shouldn't take your medication. But I've had a lot of other people tell me that I don't need to be on medication when they never saw me in my full psychosis, when I was in my first hospitalization, where my illness was at its absolute worst. No one saw me in that state. I mean, if you talk to me in that state, nothing I was saying was making sense. I was fully in a in a delusion, which is what psychosis is. And psychosis can come with a lot of different illnesses, especially bipolar, especially schizophrenia. So, it's when people try to tell you how to live your life, but they don't know the reality of your illness. Do not listen to them. If they say don't take your meds, don't listen to them. People, these are life-saving medications. I know for a fact that if I wasn't on these medications, I would not be here. And there's so many times I should have lost my life and I'm still here. So I just know that there's a purpose. And if I could just speak to you for a second, if you're struggling with any of the things that I'm talking about, you have a purpose. And if no one else is telling you that today, I'm going to tell you today. You have a purpose. You have a soul mission. There's a reason why you're here. You are not alone. And even if you can't figure everything out in this moment, you will be guided by the universe, and the universe will protect you, and it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to not be okay. It's okay to need professional help. It's okay to need resources. But as long as you're trying, you're exactly where you need to be. And do not beat yourself up if you have to take 5 steps forward and 5 steps back. That 5 steps forward still matters, and you're going to be able to take another 5 steps forward again. Progress is progress. So number 7, language minimizes severity. So words like anxiety, depression, or ADHD are used very casually, which dulls the understanding of how disabling they can be. So a lot of the time, languages like just therapy speak or language that's desensitized. I remember when, I struggle with ADHD, and I remember when it was just like common for teachers to call all their students ADHD because they couldn't focus. And ADHD is actually not just an illness that helps that you can't focus. Let me read the definition. So ADHD symptoms fall into 3 main areas: inattention, hyperactivity, and impulsivity, often presenting differently in results: more restless, disorganization, or with children, more physical movement. It affects focus, task completion, self-control, but also emotional regulation. And it leads to challenges in daily life, work, and relationships. Common sides include trouble focusing, fidgeting, forgetfulness, disorganization, interrupting others, mood swings, and difficulty managing time or completing tasks, with combined type being most. So adult ADHD can lead to unstable relationships, poor work or school performance, low self-esteem, and other problems. And though it's called adult ADHD, symptoms will start in early childhood and continue into adulthood. So people just think, oh, you can't focus, but no, it's more than that. It's impulsiveness, it's restlessness, it's, problems with relationships, low self-esteem. That's a lot deeper than just, I can't focus on my homework, So a lot of the time when people desensitize these words, they're not understanding the full weight. Just because a child can't focus doesn't mean they have ADHD. And just because a child can focus, doesn't mean they have ADHD. It needs to be diagnosed by a professional. And there's a lot of symptoms that go along with it. So I'm moving on. So self-blame is internalized. People with mental disabilities are often told they're lazy, dramatic, or not trying hard enough, so they begin to believe it, right? For me personally, growing up, I was punished for just existing. And so I think what's hard is that, I put a lot of self-blame on myself. I feel guilty for things I don't need to feel guilty for. And one of the things I feel guilty for the most, which comes from my trauma, is setting boundaries with people. It's very hard for me to set boundaries. And even though I do it, I still feel guilty afterwards. Like, I shouldn't have done that, or was I doing too much? Did I overthink it? But in reality, like, the truth is, we all get to have boundaries. And especially if you're mentally ill, sometimes you need even more boundaries, because if you're prone to OCD, ruminating thoughts, cyclical thinking, trying to fix yourself, then you need to protect your peace at all costs. And if there's an issue, for me, what I've learned about boundaries is that you don't lose people when you set boundaries. If you lose people setting boundaries, then they were never meant to be in your life. Close friends you can have boundaries with and they will respect it. And if they can't respect it, then, that's the problem with them and not with you, The 9 is support often requires belief, not proof. So physical disabilities can be validated by scans or equipment. Mental disabilities require trust, and many people struggle to offer that. So for a lot of people, sometimes they're not believed, either from, even in different cultures do not believe in mental illness. Even different religions don't believe in mental illness. I know my religion growing up didn't believe in mental illness, and what they thought of mental illness was casting the demons out, And so it's like, I was even speaking with an older woman who has my condition, who has been hospitalized 7 times, and her story is similar to mine. It's just, it took her a while to get on the right medication. And that is, she was saying that, she struggled with, other people telling her not to take her medication because they can't see the disability, even though the disability was wrecking her life completely. And her life was falling apart and she was self-sabotaging. She couldn't see that. And other people around her, just saw the impulsivity and probably had their own judgments without really knowing the cause, And so, for me, just with, and something I want to take a small time to talk about is with the American Disabilities Act. They do have requirements that you are required to make accommodations for people who are disabled. So even at my last job, I had a lot of disability accommodations and everything was respected. You do need letters from your doctor. You do need documentation from someone you've seen, or someone you're seeing recently, or someone who has seen you probably for at least a couple of years. It's a lot easier to get letters from someone who has built that relationship with you. But I just want everyone to know, if it falls under the ADA legal mental disability, you have the right to have accommodations in your workplace, whatever that may look like for you. So the final one, and this is huge, is stigma encourages silence. So fear of being judged, hospitalized, or seen as unstable keeps many people from being open. And that's how it was for me for a long time, because I have schizoaffective, which is a mix of schizophrenia and bipolar. So a lot of the time, there's a stigma where people think that you're violent, or that you're homeless and violent, or, that, you have homicidal thoughts. None of that was true for me. I've never, ever thought of hurting another person. The only person I've ever thought of hurting is myself, sadly. But with my mental illness, I've never been violent towards other people. So there's these stigmas that surround, even with bipolar, people will joke about it, like, just because, like, the weather is bipolar, or, just because you change your mind, you're bipolar. It's like it becomes desensitized, and there's huge stigmas around what it means. And so those stigmas are so harmful. And it's like, someone like me, I can have a good conversation with you. I am very intelligent. I am very emotionally aware. There are things that, make me who I am in a beautiful way that I would not change about myself. But, you know, I am living with a lifelong illness, you know? And so I think if society starts to work on that stigma and more people open up about what they're really struggling with, which is why I made this video, I think that the stigma will become less and less. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I just wanted to open up a little bit. My story goes so much deeper, but we have plenty of time for that later. So I hope you enjoy this video, and I will see you guys next time.